Payday 2 is a game with a massive install base. Starbreeze has given away millions of copies for free, and it goes as cheap as $1 during major Steam sales these days, meaning it may as well be using a free-to-play model, at least on PC. However, only 36% of all players have reached level 50, a feat that can easily be achieved within the first few hours of play. This means that almost 2/3 of the player base quit the game before really getting anywhere with it, suggesting that somewhere early on, there's a wall where the majority of gamers will hit. Today, I'm going to be drafting in a wonderful assistant to blind playtest the new player experience and find out what might be contributing to Payday's seemingly low retention times. This is my girlfriend, a part-time gamer with too many interests to tie her down for long, who'll be experiencing Payday 2 for the first time ever to see what holds her attention and what has her diving for the quit to desktop button as fast as possible. As I haven't been new to Payday 2 for over 9 years now, it's also going to be a journey of discovery for me to see how the new player experience has evolved over time and possibly work out how Overkill could look to improve it from a developer perspective. Especially with Payday 3 just around the corner, this should be an incredibly interesting exercise in game design and a beginner's perspective on our beloved heisting franchise. Before I go any further, to keep this as vaguely scientific as possible, let me introduce today's test subject. She's what I would call a casual gamer with moments of singular obsession. She's always had an interest in games, but the first console she owned was a Nintendo Switch, purchased back in 2018. Her history with video games is therefore fairly recent, and at least partially spurred on by entering into a relationship with a literal gaming YouTuber. Over those years, she's mainly stuck to the adventure, puzzle and strategy genre. I can confirm that Dark Souls was a no-go, but she's enjoyed games like Mario Odyssey and Breath of the Wild. In particular, she's a big fan of turn-based strategy games, her favourite being Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle, and she's recently gotten into XCOM. She has some experience with PC first-person shooters, actually completing Bioshock 1 during the first lockdown, but don't expect her to masterfully control the game from the get-go. In terms of what she knows already about Payday 2, she does support me by watching my videos, but I've come to understand it's usually just in the background, so she should be familiar with some concepts, but is unlikely to know exactly what they mean.
Houston, how do I crouch?
Yeah, that's right.
These are my friends, Jimmy, Houston, and I don't know Russ, but I know the others.
I'm pretty sure she's worked out that the game is about a few guys in mass generally stealing things though. I have told her that loud and stealth approaches will be possible and given a quick briefing on how the video is going to flow, but other than that, she'll be let loose as a complete beginner. So here's how the video is going to work. First, we'll sit together and run through the first couple of hours of the game without me giving any direct assistance. As I know I can't stop myself from backseating after this many years, I'll only be confirming the correct assumptions she makes and not walking her through how I think the game needs to be played. After that, I'll run a short coaching session for both loud, stealth and build creation, helping her to understand the core mechanics she might have missed. Then I'll let her loose to tackle a few heists on her own to measure both how the community and game itself can train player progression. My vague goal is for her to take on a heist on Overkill by the end of it all, but honestly, if she can just grasp most of the basic mechanics, I'll be pleasantly surprised, because let me reveal my position from the start. I think Payday 2 introduces new players to the gameplay loop incredibly poorly, and without a group to rely on and learn alongside, it's prohibitively confusing and difficult to get into. As we dive into session 1, right from the start it's looking like I'm onto something, as she's greeted with a busy menu including options she should never consider looking at this point, such as achievements, FBI files and the community page. Before even getting this far, she's shown a message about career mode, which, well, doesn't do its job.
Career mode is a great way to get a hang of how the... Okay, sure, I'm just gonna assume we're in that mode.
Now, I'd argue that the glowing career button should be a dead giveaway, but as she mentioned later, a different colour may have worked better at drawing her eyes toward it. In truth though, I think this mistake is on her, not the developers. After that, she spent a good amount of time working out her inventory, which can be a lot of information to take on at once. She wondered if her chosen heister would impact the stats she'd have, which makes a lot of sense, before settling on jacket and finding out that it doesn't.
I mean, I'm not gonna hit anything, so it doesn't matter, does it? Right, go with those.
Again, she spent quite a while on fashion before wondering if the description of the Pistolero gloves meant that she'd get some advantage from equipping them. I don't necessarily think this is bad intuition, but imagine more experienced gamers would assume it was flavor text.
Dude, I'm expecting to get shot a lot, so I'm going to do first aid kit.
You can tell she was going into this low on confidence, but whilst the doctor's bag may have served her better, I'm not surprised she went for the first aid kit. Melee she found incredibly confusing due to the gun butt not being chargeable, although she did manage to work out what knockdown was. The skills menu was suitably confusing for her too, failing to notice that she had 0 remaining skill points.
Oh, something now. Something did not happen.
And initially thought that the bottom tier was free due to the small 0-0. As for perk decks, she followed the same I'm going to get shot logic and went for armourer, but didn't really read beyond the title. She also couldn't seem to work out how perk decks worked, which I can honestly appreciate. It isn't clear at all how they are meant to function. With the inventory checks complete though, it's now time for her to navigate CrimeNet. I completely forgot that Bane introduces it in a rather wordy email. The timer for contracts was understandably confusing, and I think it's an outdated system that never really worked anyway. Here's one for Overkill to check out though. In the difficulty section, it actually mentions that heists are rated from 0 to 4 scores, calling Death Wish the hardest. This means that this text hasn't been updated in about half a decade, and is completely misleading.
I would go for serious calls anyway, so I'm good.
After making it through these menus, I'm honestly uncertain how much of it stuck. Let's be honest, text dumps are never the most effective way to teach players anything. Even so, she looked to embark upon her first heist, a normal rat. I found it interesting that she chose this because it had 0 skulls, but also no stealth marker, meaning she could go aloud. Again, not bad intuition, but little did she know she just signed herself up for one of the most mechanically diverse multi-day heists in the game. After immediately earning an achievement for doing something as simple as jumping, I can kinda see why Payday throws so many of these little dopamine hits at you. The first thing she comes across, which isn't automatically explained, is how ammo pickups work, finding a bundle that she couldn't take as she was already fully supplied. Unsure what it was, she shot at it, thinking it would be the interact button, meaning she could actually pick it up, but didn't understand what had actually taken place. Then she ran through the UI.
Okay.
Wait, what? What's on my screen?
You
I've
work that out.
killed, there's no hostages, I have a timer. Meet the cooks, that's probably the name of something. There's my friends, and then there's me, 3 times something. I have it. I don't know.
As you can probably tell, she didn't have the best grasp of what she was working with, but enough to go off at this stage. She found the ingredients easily enough, more so thanks to in-game prompts than the actual explanation, meaning there was still a fair bit of confusion as to what she should be doing. The way Bane presents information seemed to stress her out, especially with the building music and sound of approaching police force. Combat!
Who are you? Are you a friend? No.
I like the, he turned and ran away, and that's when you decided he's
wait,
not
what?
friend.
I'm gonna hide over here.
Nice, I think you got one then.
Well, I think she handled that surprisingly well. Of course, there were a few shots fired at dead bodies, but the actual shooter part of the gameplay loop feels quite intuitive and immediately satisfying. I noticed that the green borders of equipment tended to distract her quite a bit. I suppose they can look like they're indicating an objective, but for some reason it took her a while to pick up the yellow borders of the actual objectives. Things were a little too much to take in at once, so she paused the game to take stock, which is a really smart move, bearing in mind here is where you can keep track of the contract info.
And I just need to...
That's fine. This is probably good,
okay.
You need to work out what you're doing.
So I picked some stuff up from the toilet.
Yes.
I don't know what it is. And he wants me to pour some hydrogen chloride into something. Into what? Am I mixing the meth in here, in the house, while they're shooting at me?
After clearly processing the right thing to do, she just randomly added muriatic acid and got an F in chemistry. But honestly, not the end of the world. I love that on lower difficulties you can just continue with rats even after making mistakes. I noticed when fleeing, she tends to hone in on one thing and focus on that entirely. So in this case, it was sprinting to the road, whereas more experienced players of the genre might try and balance running with taking cover and returning fire. This is why normal difficulty exists, ladies and gents. She also ran directly into an invisible wall. Games like Payday 2 don't try particularly hard to hide their limitations, at least they didn't back in 2013. I think modern releases make more of an attempt to cover up this kind of thing, potentially explaining her confusion. It's at this late stage of the heist that she also notices that the panel in the top left of her screen indicates what she should be doing, a useful lesson to learn for future days. It was also here that she worked out how to use her equipment, complaining that G is too far away from WASD for her small hands, so maybe controller would have been easier in hindsight. In completing day 1, which by the way was pretty impressive all things considered, she found that she really enjoyed the part where her experience wheel filled up. After that, she was forced into an escape, which I got the impression she also really enjoyed. No complex tasks to worry about, just a chance to further showcase her skills with a mouse and keyboard. I do appreciate that the crew AI did a lot of the heavy lifting here. It felt like Jimmy was watching over her, and I appreciate that. She also tended to fire wasted shots directly into shields because she believed it was doing something. I suppose not being familiar with the purpose of a hit marker might be the reason for that. But in all honesty, this was really impressive. It looks like many of the core gameplay mechanics of Loud had already been successfully absorbed.
Waving on a jet plane.
That's staying in the video. That's staying in the video.
Oh.
She seemed to be having a good time. On day 2, she attempted to actually open dialogue with the Cobras, which probably came from an understanding of RPGs like Fallout. Obviously that isn't possible here, and Payday to me doesn't give off that vibe, but I can forgive someone for thinking it could be done. Sadly, well, you can see what happened. Again, gunplay had been her forte so far, so why change things now? On the topic of deja vu, once again she was understandably too slow to actually recover the intel, meaning she could escape immediately, but was entering day 3 without the codes, meaning just about everything that could go wrong had. I think she was having fun.
I'm expecting
Big
to
money.
get slaughtered.
Oh.
Who are these people? Deducting. Wait, what? Did I get less money?
Heading into day 3, yeah, executing civilians is not a great look. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that was a girlfriend problem, not Overkill's fault for making it unclear. Now, we all know Rats has one final surprise in store, the C4 rigged bus, which doesn't disappoint. In any case, she did the classic escape with one bag and successfully completed her very first heist in Payday 2. Lots went wrong, but dealing with that adversity is what Payday's all about, so I'm genuinely proud of her for that first attempt. However, she was unimpressed about having to split her winnings into an offshore account, and I agree there's something less satisfying about that. Fortunately, the card flip reward is always fun, especially as a new player. After quickly discussing the heist, she was immediately up for another, although did mention that the 3-day one was a little too long, so maybe Overkill are right to focus on single-day heists as they have been recently. It's at this point that she accidentally stumbles on the tutorial heist, frustrating her that she didn't notice them sooner. This was a lucky find, but had she seen the career mode at the start, it would have never been missed. She chose to take on the Loud tutorial first, giving us our first look at how well it instructs a brand new player. First things first, it's not immediately apparent to her what casing mode is, which kinda confuses all the lessons learned back on Rats. Even so, she makes her way into the nightclub, even though I don't think she quite understood why she was able to walk past civs. When putting the mask on, she's first greeted with some soft stealth mechanics, but as these aren't well introduced yet, and this is designed to be the Loud tutorial, she understandably gets caught immediately.
Shh. Die quieter.
I noticed that she also tried to explore the limited environment, although I'm not entirely sure what she was looking for, as after stumbling across a money bundle, she didn't give it a second glance. This is definitely learned behaviour from playing games like Hollow Knight and The Legend of Zelda, where exploration is rewarded more often than not. Unfortunately, I don't think Payday does this enough. Once again, actual combat was fine and fairly well handled, meaning she could run back to the van with the loot in tow and discover her least favourite mechanic, bag throwing, taking 5 goes before eventually making it in. We've all been there. Day 2 of the tutorial is another escape, and this time she expressed her disappointment at not being able to drive herself. This is something that I almost guarantee will exist in Payday 3. In what must be an incredibly confusing scenario for new players, Dragon died at this point completely upside down. Definitely not everything working as intended. Otherwise though, this tutorial seemed to be doing a good job at answering the questions she'd asked previously, explaining what cable ties were, how to use equipment, and some general multiplayer mechanics that would stand her in good stead if she chose to play online. Longer range gunfights were not quite as successful, as micro-adjusting her aim was still a challenge, but it was enough to get her through heist number 2 and graduate the first lesson. Oh, and it only took 2 throws to secure the loot this time around. Still, it took it out of her. After a short break and me directly pointing out career mode at this point, it was time for her to show me what she had in the skill department. Could she create a build that would work for how she wanted to play? There's definitely something to be said for how Payday feeds back your progress when it comes to perk decks and leveling. Let's just say it was appreciated.
What does this mean?
This means I'm great.
Okay.
Once she had some perk points, it was much easier to understand how perk decks worked, meaning she quickly grasped the mechanic this time around. Knowing that she'd picked Armourer and wanted some help aiming, she went with steady grip and fire control, which did suit the way she was playing. Unfortunately, she decided to grab a few melee skills, quote, because it's a boxer. I have to have it. She's recently taken up boxing. I guess that's personal skill affinity at least. More than anything, I was just happy to see she grasped the leveling process, although she hadn't worked out yet that she could respec. Irrespective, it was time to pick up the pace, moving up to the hard difficulty on a jewelry store hit. I like the way she immediately blamed someone else for alerting the security guard, although it's only ever implied that they can spot you with your mask off in her defense.
Wait, what? What happened? Jesus. Someone did bad.
Frustratingly, because Bane mentions a safe in the back, she wastes the first minute trying to find something that doesn't exist on this difficulty. Definitely not great design. Here is where she also learns that she can't carry more than 1 loot bag at a time. Still, she had already accidentally learned about AI carrying, a lesson she remembered to allow much faster completion. Sadly, tunnel vision is absolutely her biggest problem as a gamer. We can see this in action when she decides to start cable tying civs in the middle of a gunfight. Little did I know, this would be a clutch play after going into custody and needing that civ to get right back in the action. Chains saved the day and took out the sniper who had caused so many problems, and she actually made really good use of that time to hone in on the objective. For once, tunneling was helping. Flashbangs genuinely broke her though.
That won't.
That's gone?
What just happened?
You just got flashbanged, you're absolutely fine.
Another thing I observed from watching this heist was how disinterested she was with the actual thievery mechanics already. She just wanted to complete the objective and escape, at no point did she consider how extra loot could help her out. Partially, I think this is her fault for being unobservant, but I also think that the game struggles to put emphasis on that core stealing fantasy. Even she noticed that money wasn't that useful to her outside of heists. Due to this objective focus though, she cleared her first hard heist without too many difficulties, afterwards explaining why she ended up going loud.
What actually happened then was you walked directly into a guard. So,
I was
what?
going to talk to him.
Payday doesn't have a talking mechanic.
Yeah, so it's not like Pokemon.
And what were you planning to say to the guy? Hey, here to rob your jewelry store.
Oh, maybe you would tell me what the safe was.
Excuse me, where's your expensive valuables?
Sometimes, I wonder if the game she thinks she's playing is the game we all actually want to play. Dialogue in Payday would be incredible. I next suggested that we should give stealth a go to review all elements of the game. Here she gets kinda mad that the stealth tutorial isn't immediately accessible in career mode. Honestly, she's right, I have no idea why they pushed the stealth tutorial so far back. In her anger, she decides to start playing Animal Crossing instead, or about as close as we can get in Payday 2 with the safe house.
Where's the kitchen?
Where's the kitchen? But
Is that the gym? That is so sad. We're gonna have to upgrade that.
That's as good a reason as any to want to upgrade something. Heading into the safe house, she complained about the lack of target practice for her weapons, to which I pointed out that there could be if she'd spent her money on that instead of a gym. But you know, there probably should be a firing range as standard, it's a bit too useful to miss out on as a new player. Anyway, she was disappointed that the gang hadn't invested in a rack, meaning squatting is off the table, for shame.
Okay, so you go bam, bam, and then you go bam, bam.
The punching bag was a big hit, but Dragan is clearly not her favourite character. Side jobs are a little overwhelming to new players.
Side jobs? What, like strip teases and stuff?
what?
Strip shows.
What? Who calls that a side job?
I don't know.
Especially her, apparently. At this point, she also got a little lost in the Crime Net menus, where there's a lot to take in, but not a lot that's super relevant to new players, although I have no idea how they could hide these menus until the information feels relevant. Upon seeing mutators, for whatever reason she thought it was an enemy lexicon, which honestly I've never considered but would be excellent. I'd love the game to give us a little more information about tasers, shields and dozers, so another great shout by my girlfriend, the game designer. In any case, she eventually found the stealth tutorial, where the first thing Bane asks you to do is put on your mask, which she pointed out, quite rightly, is dumb as hell when planning to actually stealth something. Sure, it makes sense when going loud, but would absolutely make you more conspicuous here. As for her stealth skills, yeah, I saw that coming. I've seen her fumble a few hold Fs, so messing up the pager here wasn't exactly a surprise. If you ask me, actions like answering pages or lockpicking doors should be press to start and press to cancel instead of key holds. On the run back, things went better, but unsurprisingly, given her previous struggles with loot bags, dropping the body out of sight was a nightmare. After getting over that hurdle, she actually did a fair job of dropping the guards even in a pressured scenario, but god the bags are fiddly. On her way out of the heist, the final guard decides to go crouch in the corner, giving her the time to get around him and escape. A pretty impressive performance, I'd say, from someone completely new to these mechanics, and a relatively complete introduction to the basics on Payday's end. Day 2 is much the same, allowing her to try out these newly learned techniques more confidently. Except, unfortunately, she turned on ECM feedback, alerting everyone on the map and failing the heist. At no point does it tell you not to do this, so there's no way she's the first to mess this up.
Yeah, I'm working on it, dumbass.
Why are you so hostile?
Well, because I'm here risking my life, and he's just telling me things to do that I obviously know.
She's not a fan of Bane's commentary, still, his commentary is actually pretty well written on this tutorial in my opinion. I think she just sort of got stealth, at the very least she was pretty good at taking out security.
You absolutely can. Go.
Blinking!
Answer it. Nice.
Although that was a close one. Overall, I think the stealth tutorial does a really good job, and I think it shows within the gameplay. Next up, it's time for a quick lesson from me in terms of all the things she was struggling to comprehend and take advantage of to prepare her for some solo attempts at a higher difficulty. First, taking a look at the build, I pointed her in the direction of some heavier pieces of armor to get more out of her perk deck of choice, an easy miss when just starting out. I actually think that most of her issues came from a lack of understanding within the menus. She hadn't worked out that things could really unlock over time, and neither did she consider the possibility of changing her weapons or refunding skill points to refine her skill build.
There's no way that tells me, oh, you can remove this.
Wait, except there is. You refuse to look at the bigger screen.
Oh. Yeah, I see.
You see, all this information is visible on screen, but you have to want to look at the wider picture to find it. If you tunnel in on the more exciting elements, such as the skills themselves, which I imagine many new players are inclined to do, you'll miss some of these important nuances. I imagine this is something that people discover with time regardless, but it does steepen that learning curve. She also found perk decks to be somewhat overwhelming, assuming that many people wouldn't know what to do with them without some prior knowledge, which she passively had from listening to me. As for weapons, she actually makes a good point about the fact that you're not given a lot of feedback about what's working, meaning the stats seem kinda formless without prior knowledge of enemy health pools, or by running a descriptive HUD mod.
I don't know how you play it, but I didn't notice that, oh, this takes little damage, because it's not a game where you see how much you do anyways.
That's true.
So you don't necessarily reminded of that.
That's why a lot of people like HUD mods, because it shows you how much health enemies have, it shows how much damage you're doing. I, for one, love them.
Sure, I might be able to change things, and I know there's a lot of things coming after the heist. Say, oh, you get this weapon, you get that weapon. That doesn't mean anything to me.
This meant that she didn't care to change from the fairly abysmal starting weapons the game gives you. Basically, she was doing a challenge run without realising it.
Oh, you actually don't have any weapons anyways.
So, yeah, it's not the clearest, but again, if you have enough of a search around, you can see there's loads more weapons out there for you to try.
I think there's a bit of a disconnect from your inventory, bearing in mind everything is managed from menus, especially for new players. This could be fixed by having a more interactable and fully functional safe house instead of a glorified shooting gallery. I finally pointed her in the right direction weapon-wise. She was drawn in by the allure of the bows, but I managed to convince her that maybe an LMG would suit her fire from the hip playstyle a little better. She also learned to modify it. Of course, the weapon sets exist now to try and help with this, but I think it's a pretty incomplete system at this point, so I walked her through some improved options. As for the rest of her build, I pointed her in the direction of the doctor's bag to reset her downs, and suggested that she specialise in oppressor skills like body expertise to help with her slight aim issues. The final thing I showed her was the crew AI menu, which she'd avoided previously.
You never went into the crew menu.
No, because I said I had no crew.
Yeah, I know.
The crew can grant absolutely massive benefits to solo players, but I imagine very few new players give it a second thought. By equipping Quick and Inspiring, the AI would help her in areas she'd struggled with previously and had caused some frustration, especially the slow interaction speed. Next for the career mode was a bank heist, the first mission she'd tried that offered pre-planning. As a massive fan of top-down strategy games like XCOM, this was a feature she really appreciated. Having some tactical insight into the heist engaged her with it immediately. It's funny because pre-planning is something that I think is underutilized, but seeing it from her perspective, it really does give a sense of autonomy that other heists lack. At the start of this heist, she remembered the tutorial information, storing the bank manager away in a safer area, and starting up the drill instantly, a pretty big improvement when it came to taking on and understanding objectives. She also managed to dispatch a very hard bulldozer by destroying his faceplate, another development in her mechanical understanding, somewhat.
That's a grenade.
Ah!
You got him. You also killed all of the civilians.
Key inputs was still not perfect, but she was getting the hang of it and making pretty good use of the RPK, a much better suited weapon for her playstyle. Funnily enough, she insisted on single firing all of her weapons, which meant that she actually had crazy good control over the normally high recoil LMG.
Heh, loser.
This was honestly a massive glow up from a gameplay perspective. I also love that she independently decided to place and use her doctor's bags once at low health, although she enjoyed punching Jiro a little too much. Taking cover was still slightly beyond her capabilities, as a run and gun aggro style seemed to favour her, but she was still putting up an impressive fight, actually setting up her AI with additional bags to carry. Cloakers did not play nice, and at this point she fell into the classic loop of desperately wanting to secure all of the loot she had, panicking as she crossed the roof, and then making a wild break for the escape. This put her back in custody, but for the second time, the AI came to her rescue, bringing her back and helping her to escape by carrying the loot across. Far from a clean run, but damn if I wasn't impressed by yet another first time completion, this time on very hard. Now the only thing she was missing was the stealth experience. I sped up the process by putting together a rudimentary stealth build for her, before pointing her in the direction of Shadow Raid, another heist with excellent pre-planning.
So, yeah, because the vault is over here, but there's no entrance other than... There is only a main entrance, there's this,
Yeah.
and then I have to go, like, no.
I love the logical way she aims to take on heists, however, all the best laid plans don't always work out in practice. Payday is a different beast once in a heist, and details on blueprints don't always look exactly as you'd imagine. She followed through with her sewer entrance plan, but once inside the compound was very disoriented. This meant she deviated from the original route she'd set, and walked directly into a guard next to a camera, failing the heist. What impressed me was how she managed to break down exactly how that failure happened.
So, I got caught in here,
You did. Yeah,
not in there.
Yeah, sorry, I said on the bottom floor. I can't
So
actually tell.
this is where the camera was.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, so I came through here.
Yeah.
In there, right, okay.
I do think more people should take a logical approach. In light of how problematic cameras can be though, on her next attempt, I directed her to the camera operator via the rooftop approach to avoid even more frustration. The basics of her stealth movement were actually pretty good, surprising since she'd never played a stealth game before. Sadly, it wasn't that which let her down, more so the fiddly nature of certain interactable objects in Payday 2, getting caught and shot at, alerting everyone on the map and calling it quits there. Whilst this heist seemed to be too much of a challenge at this point for her, it was still a good learning experience, setting her up for the final section of this video, the mastery. The idea behind this was that I left her alone to play through a heist without any off-putting glances or overbearing advice from me. I, however, did get to pick the heist, choosing Election Day as I wanted to see if her more thoughtful style of play would help with the puzzly elements of this heist. Also, she wanted to test out her stealth abilities as she believed she could just get by in loud, whereas stealth was more of a test of what she'd learned. Sadly, it didn't have pre-planning, which was a bit of a shame given how much she liked to set out a route. Let me hand it over to her though.
Stay out of sight. Is everyone else just gonna camp out? Jesus. Can I swim? No. I can't jump in the water either. Right. I forgot. I'm a hardcore parkour artist. Oh no! Oh, yeah, I killed a civilian. Oops. Are there cameras inside the containers?
No.
Well, I'm told to look inside the containers, but they only have empty crates. So, well, I can't open them, so I don't really know what's going on. New instructions. Look in the warehouse. Oh. I used to drill for that. That might be noisy. No, but I'm by it, so if they see that, they see me. See, this is boring. Why does it take so long? I mean, I get it if it's the one we did before, the one with the vault. Because I had to stay alive for that amount of time. Oh, there's loads of people. Fail. Oh, that was close.
You're looking for a computer.
There's probably one in here. If I had to put my drill on it. And there's probably one up there with this guy. I'm gonna run.
Uh-oh.
I don't care.
You're about to.
There's no computer!
No, they've all spotted you. You're going loud.
After an admirable first attempt, I took over to explain one way to solve the heist puzzle.
Bleach.
Oh!
No, I'm not giving you that advantage.
Come on.
You're about to be caught by someone.
Why?
Because someone literally just saw you, and now someone's seen him. That civilian up there spotted you.
I don't get it. And why are they so scared?
What do you mean? Because they've seen a man with a gun!
Oh.
They're running away. You could actually control them, but you're too slow. They're gonna call the police.
Oh, they're on phone.
Yeah, you failed. You made it. No, don't run into more. Oh, this is supreme panic. It's not the blue. Hi. He spotted you. You need to deal with him, otherwise. Ah, now he's fired. Okay, one last roll of the dice. I'm going to teach you something even more secret. We can basically work out which one it's most likely going to be.
Because one and the other one.
Yes.
Or green.
Well, is there another Omni? Yes, there's two Omnis.
Yeah.
Meaning, it's more likely the yellow hefty.
Remind me to never become a bank robber.
Do you need reminding?
Yes.
Maybe I should get the high ground.
Oh.
Nice! Good job. Crouch. Too slow. You got caught. The experiment is a failure. Should we try day 2 to redeem you? She sounds well up for it.
After it seemed just a little too much at this point, I moved her on to day 2 for a more traditional stealth experience.
Break into the compound. Out of map. I have a feeling I should have done it further this way. Because they might see my hole in the fence. How did I do it? Right, one set. I probably have to watch this now, don't I? How do I open this? Oh, are you serious? Did I just waste my key code? Yeah. Yes, I did. Go on. Yes! Got garden, so great. Got 2, and a dead guy. I'm carrying around a dead person. This isn't great. Oh, there's so many crates in there that I could use my card on. Damn it! Well, so what I did first was I ran into all the invisible walls. It was great fun. Oh, but there weren't any guys there. This is what I'm saying, if you have small NPCs, they should just always be crouched. Yes. No, not NPCs, but like a little character. Pack it when there's no one nearby.
You sure got him. God, you really hurt his leg. You monster.
Yeah, okay. To relax my shoulders.
Yeah. Gamer posture.
Yeah.
You look more comfortable than I do when I
My
sit in that
shoulders
chair.
and my neck.
Oh, someone spotted your dead body. Ah, you didn't get him. I think you can do this though. And I think it would be such...
Oh, my stress levels!
Ignore that. Why didn't you buy some assets? That's so annoying.
Yeah, that's just my regular life. Shit.
Well, yeah, but people can spot it.
It's outside.
Are there no guards outside?
No. He's a
He's a Civ.
Yeah, what do I do? What do I do?
I mean, you can get him down first, and then you can decide if you want to kill him. I'm pretty sure most people would kill him.
Great shot, right? Okay. This is the real game. A bit, and then look up.
Woo!
Yes.
Game complete. There's 2. There's another one. You need to kill the other one. Now get the pager. Quick! Because you've got to go as fast as you possibly can to get to that pager. It's going to be incredibly close. If you do this, you can graduate. Go! Woo! You're going to have to kill him too, but hopefully he doesn't shoot you. He might shoot you. Oh! You did well to get both those pages.
Okay, there's where I decided this was enough torture for one day. Election Day is a tough heist, and I think she handled it better than expected in stealth. By managing to actually do a 2-pager juggle, she'd succeeded in pulling off a stealth tech some players probably don't manage to do consistently even after a year of playing, which is enough for me to say that she's exceeded all expectations in understanding and executing Payday 2's core mechanics. I'm really proud of her, not only for stepping out of her comfort zone in terms of game genre, but also agreeing to do so in the high-pressure environment of a live recording for YouTube. Certainly not a bad first showing, if you ask me. To conclude this video though, bearing in mind we did want it to be educational and at least somewhat useful to the developers at Overkill, I decided to run a quick Q&A with her regarding the experience. When asked what her first impressions were, she pointed out how menu heavy the opening of the game is, despite the fact that you can change very little as a brand new player. This can definitely be information overload. She suggested that a safe house introduction that exposes you to the core gameplay mechanics in a less hectic fashion would have worked better for her. Funnily enough, I think this was the original intention for Payday 2, but it fell by the wayside due to the team wanting to spend more time refining the heist themselves as opposed to the new player experience. In terms of how well the game conveyed its core concepts to her, she found Bane's dialogue to be useful when she paid attention to him, but still felt like the game was fairly unclear with regards to its individual heist objectives. More importantly, she never felt like there was any purpose to what she was doing, either narratively or gameplay wise. When asked what she'd like to be able to do that she couldn't, she simply said check a map, which is an interesting one. I've never felt the need for a map in Payday, but it is true that there's a disconnect between the blueprints we see in the lobby and then what we can actually explore in game. In terms of progression, she felt that the game was better at developing external player improvement than internal gameplay progression. Again, this leans into that disconnect between your actions mid-heist and the rewards you receive for completing said heist, although I do think this was partially her answer as she's not big into RPGs or shooters, which is really where most of the progression lies in Payday 2. Her favourite part of the game was the planning section of Heist, slightly due to her strategy background, and her least favourite part was the loud gameplay. this is a huge shock to me, as I actually think this is one of the best elements of Payday 2, but suppose you can't account for someone not being a big fan of shooters. When she elaborated on why, it actually seemed that she was specifically not fond of her experience with the bank heist, where she was essentially just standing around shooting hordes of cops. When the gunplay was more tactical and required movement, she did have fun with it. I wonder if she would have enjoyed release Payday more than 2022 Payday after hearing that. Finally, in terms of what she wanted improved, her main focus was on storytelling and world immersion. Payday's characters have gained immense popularity, but I think that's a result of their appearances in media outside of the game. As she's not been exposed to any of that, there was definitely a disconnect for her here. The impetus to do anything in-game, particularly to keep playing, simply wasn't present for her as a new player, because she didn't see how her time investment would equate to anything tangible in the end. In other words, I got the impression that, like many others who've put on the mask and barely gone any further, the game failed to grip her narratively, and as such felt purposeless without any end goal. Personally, I think there's a lot to be gained from the conversation we had, and I found she pointed out flaws that I pretty much refused to consider over the years. In some cases, I strongly disagreed with her conclusions, as I sometimes worried she wanted Payday 2 to be like any other story-focused co-op game, without the charm and nuance of our beloved title. But even so, I enjoyed the Q&A and will be posting a full version of it over on Patreon to patrons at all tiers, so check that out if you want to see the interview unedited. As for my overall conclusion, I found this to be an incredibly interesting exercise, and I can't wait to get our hands on Payday 3 so I can test out my girlfriend's skills once again. I learned a lot from the experience, including not to underestimate her abilities with a weapon in hand and her trigger-happy nature. In the unlikely possibility that any developers from Overkill are watching, I hope that this was in some way useful. I know how difficult it must be to craft a welcoming new player experience that works for all types of players, and genuinely think that Payday 2 did a better job of teaching than I remembered. If there was one major takeaway for me, it's that Payday 3 deserves a purposeful narrative from the get-go, which sucks players into a life of crime, even if they don't have that criminal intent themselves. Oh, and keep those helmets flying. I don't care what she says, you have some of the best gunplay in the industry. I can't wait to see it translated into Unreal. With that all said, both my girlfriend and I are incredibly grateful for you taking the time to watch today's video, and hope to see you all very soon in the next one.
Yes!
A huge thank you to my dedicated Patreon backers. If you want to join this crew in going infamous, check out the link below and pledge as little as $2 to see your name in the credits, or get 24-hour early access to future videos and vote on upcoming content. Take care, I'll see you all soon.